Hi everyone. So my project is about the adoption of smart technologies in lower and middle income countries to support community health workers. As much as I wanted to do something directly just with ultrasound, I had to kind of put myself a little bit further away from it so I could look at a bigger picture, but then maybe come back to that again. So before I talk about my work, I just wanted to talk to you about a little story. So this is a 28-year-old Indian woman married with children. Her name is Sunita Verma. She lives in rural India in Uttar Pradesh. She is educated up to grade 10, and she is an ASHA worker, which is an accredited social health activist, also known as a community health worker worldwide. Her job is to go visit about 200 households throughout the course of the month. And she doesn't get paid per hour, but it's incentivized pay. So the number of high-risk referrals she makes to the hospital. She has to walk on foot for 15 kilometers per day sometimes, and has a whole list of duties. So for workers like her, smart technologies have been introduced to support her work so she can enter data and maybe even help with a bit of clinical decision support, maybe high-risk referrals. So on the left here is an example of an app that was rolled out. It was pretty big, funded by the government, and it was, introduced in primary healthcare centers. It was monitoring their work on every micro meter level. This app did everything. It even helped them record the number of referrals they made so they could get paid. So it was a brilliant solution and looked really good on paper. The ASHAs were given free mobiles as well along with the app. So what happened to this? So here's Sunita on the right, sometime later, 2 months later, saying that, well, we've actually stopped using the app. And along with a few other health workers who gave this news report interview, what was happening in that area was that, yes, they were given mobile phones, but they didn't have enough electrical outlets to actually charge the phone. So there was really no performance at all. It wasn't practical for their area. There was low internet connectivity. So the idea was for them to get support from their primary healthcare doctors, because she's not a clinician, but they were not able to get that. They didn't have enough training on how to enter and delete data, so they weren't even sure on how to use this app. And also there was this fear that they were being monitored and this was just a surveillance app, so they didn't feel comfortable using this. One of the things said by the news reporter is that a smart mobile is not enough to make a person smart. So just giving them technology doesn't mean that it's actually going to get adopted. So this is where I wanted to take my DPhil project. I wanted to understand if we have a technology that works within maternal health, how can we integrate that into the local context in a way that is meaningful for that local population? And how can we increase demand from that population as well, from that community, so they actually feel like it's going to bring them some value in their daily life? So to understand context first, local context, we might want to start with a framework. Now, implementation science has a whole bunch of frameworks. There's this one website that lists a whole bunch of implementation frameworks, and I think that itself has about 70 different frameworks. So it's really hard to know which one to pick. This one on the bottom, Sleeper, is used very often. There was this conference that happened recently in Bangladesh, and a lot of implementation scientists came together. And they said, unfortunately, what's happening is that these implementation science frameworks are very difficult to apply in real-world settings in lower and middle-income countries. They're quite complex. They don't have a team of implementation scientists, and between the language barriers and the practical challenges of being there, it just sometimes gets difficult. So how can we first start with a conceptual framework that might help us understand what the barriers are in this situation? So I'm starting with a scoping review of any smart mobile intervention across lower and middle income countries. My scoping review is going to look at 4 key concepts. One is that it has to be a smart device intervention, so not something that is mobile-based or SMS-based. It has to be intended for the support of community health workers, but not really their supervisors. Has to be they are the end user to help in a maternity setting, and it has to be based in a low resource, lower and middle income country. So far, this is what I've done. I've searched 6 databases with the help of Caroline, a lovely librarian. We had to search about 2 or 3 times before we got the search right. Found about just over 1,100 studies, 700 remaining after duplicates was removed. I've just completed the title and abstract screening last week. And now I'm left with about 69 studies and maybe 118 maybe studies. So this little circle on the right is my very own screenshot of what I've done. So I thought I'll put that in there. The next step is Yasmin is going to be my second reviewer, so that still needs to be done. I still need to do a gray literature search where I expect I might get another 50 more sources, maybe 3 or 4 more interventions, and then a full text screening of the articles. But so far, this is what I've found from those 69 papers. Those 69 papers relate to, some of them relate to the same intervention. So one intervention might have 5 or 10 articles, like a cost analysis or things like that. So found about 16 mobile interventions. 10 of them were from India, 5 were from Africa, and 1 was for Afghanistan and Pakistan. I was expecting to find more from Africa, but turns out they have a lot more SMS-based interventions rather than smart interventions I give them inside. So that was interesting. India seems to be the hot spot for smart interventions. Some of the facilitators were, so far, found that, community health workers, they feel that their confidence is improved, they're communicating better with their primary health care centers, and they just feel like they're respected more in the community. Respect is a big thing for community health workers because they're not educated like clinicians, but they do work off of trust and respect. And the barriers were that, for example, one of the studies, the decision maker in the household are often men or mother-in-laws for women, so it doesn't matter what these health workers tell them, these women cannot make a decision. So there you go, that's the intervention. And then technical difficulties with the device, practical difficulties with training. So here is a very, very early stage conceptual framework that's quite simple that I've come up with. I just discussed this with Jane this morning, so this is the first time that she's seen it as well. So the red dots are basically, I'm plotting the different barriers in different sections. So the center of the framework is the community health worker and the pregnant woman, and this is her relationship. So let's say if she feels like she's more trusted by the pregnant woman, I would put a little dot here saying that's the facilitator. But there's also issues between the task and the technology itself, and a lot of the barriers. So this was just a way for me to plot different barriers in a very simple way. And one thing that Jane mentioned is missing here is just the environment, because some of the barriers might not be between the task and technology, or the community health worker and the government, or the woman and her husband. Some might just be in the environment, like there might be a flood. So I'm going to put that in there as well. And based on this, I'm going to now apply this to the smart health intervention and develop some interview guides, which is the next step. Not going to talk too much about smart health because I think everyone in this room is quite familiar with it, but it is the ideal sort of setting to study why such interventions may or may not work. They're currently doing a process evaluation in 2 states of India, and I'm hoping to be a part of that, and that's where my DPhil will come in. And then moving on, once I've identified where some of these barriers are, let's say between the task and the community health worker and that relationship, I'm hoping to create some strategic content like videos and posters that would help with that kind of thing. And these are my supervisors. You've already met all of them. Just a little bit about myself. I've been a sonographer for 12 years. I recently completed MSc in Translational Health Sciences, which is why I'm very interested in translational health. Grew up in Canada and India. if anyone is into Myers-Briggs, my personality type is ENFP. I'm very classic ENFP. So you can look that up, and which means that I'm very good at looking at the bigger picture, but rather than getting to the task, I just go around it like that, but it does get done. So which I think is important for probably Jane to know as well. So thank you, that's my presentation.